church dealt with the old set of problems pretty well. How was it going to deal with the new set of problems? You see, now only Christians were promoted in the government or in the army. Many people became Christians because that was the way to get along and to get promoted. In addition, the whole appearance of the church changed. Now there was a much greater emphasis on pomp and ceremony and grandeur and riches. You don't have big parades through the streets of Rome when you're a persecuted minority, right? But when you're in power, you celebrate what God is doing, right? And you do it publicly. That's the change that the church had to reckon with in an amazingly short period of time. I'll tell you another thing that enters into this. It's Constantine's help in doctrinal matters. This complicated things immensely. Because you see now, and I believe that Constantine meant well, right? Listen, I'm a Christian. There's controversy in the church. Shouldn't we get together and try to solve these problems? That's a good Christian motivation, right? But what did it lead to? It led to the idea that there was an official government position on doctrinal controversies. Now, at times this seemed to be good, but in the long run, it was very harmful to the church. The church started becoming much more like a corporation, and the emperor of Rome was like the CEO. By the way, Constantine retained the title that had been given to Roman emperors before him, the title of Pontifex Maximus, the high priest of the pagan worship of Rome. Now, he was no longer the high priest of the pagan cults. He was the high priest of Christianity, so to speak. Now, let me give you an example. In the Arian controversy, Constantine's greatest concern seemed to be the unity of the church, right? Listen, some Christians say that Jesus isn't really God. Other Christians say that he was God. The feeling we have come from Constantine is Constantine says, look, I don't really care what side you pick. Let's just stop the fighting about it. And so he called together the Council of Nicaea. Now, you see, this Arian controversy and Constantine's concern for the unity of the church, in one sense, was good. Because the church was almost entirely united against Arius. There was also a problem that arose because Athanasius, who was the successor of Alexander in Alexandria, Athanasius refused to accept repentant Arians back into the church. And you know what? Constantine tried to force him to do so. But you see, when Constantine died, his empire was divided among his sons. One of his sons basically turned out to be an Arian, and he forced an Arian creed upon many reluctant bishops. When the bishops appealed to the long-standing traditions of the church, or the canons of the church, Constantinus, the son of Constantine, said, "Whatever I will shall be regarded as canon. Either obey or go into exile." You see, listen, in the Donatist controversy and in the Arian controversy, Constantine got it right, but it was almost by accident, right? His son got it wrong. And now the official power of the church was being, the official power of the Roman government was being used to promote heresy. What I find very interesting about these controversies, such as the Donatist controversy and the Arian controversy, is that at first, no church leader ever called into question the right of the emperor to get involved in the matter. They simply believed that he made the wrong decision, or the right decision. Later, Athanasius openly declared his belief that the emperor simply didn't have any business ruling in doctrinal matters. He said to the Roman emperor, listen, I don't care what you, or I should say the whole world says. No, the emperor has no right to rule in doctrinal matters. But you see, I just want you to understand how Constantine, with good intentions, set these terrible forces in motion, right? This principle that the emperor should somehow be the umpire or the arbitrator of these doctrinal disputes ended up being a very, very difficult proposition. Well, one other thing about Constantine before we get to his kids, you can't talk about Constantine without at least mentioning his mother. Constantine's mother, Helena, was also a notable person. She's well known for making a pilgrimage to the Holy Land and for looking for places where biblical events took place. Most of the traditional sites that are in Jerusalem for where this happened and where that happened, they date back to Helena's search. Matter of fact, when Helena went to Jerusalem, she had a dream in which she saw Mount Calvary being excavated. So going to Jerusalem, she found Jesus' tomb, or at least what people said was Jesus' tomb, and 3 crosses that were nearby with the inscription that Pilate had written separate from any of the crosses. So to find out which one of the 3 crosses were Jesus' cross, they touched a sick woman with each one of the 3, and at the touch of the 3rd cross, supposedly the woman was healed. So what did Helena do with the cross? Well, part of it was set in silver and was to be kept at Jerusalem. The nails were still in the cross, supposedly. This is all fanciful, of course. And one of the nails was attached to the emperor's battle helmet, and another was attached to the bridle of his horse. And so, supposedly with this finding of the true cross, now look, are you going to tell me that the true cross of Jesus Christ survived some 300 years in that kind of climate, in that kind of place? It's impossible. It's an actual impossibility, but people believed it. And over the years, thousands of slivers of wood were set in altars of churches and monasteries that were said to be from the true cross. By the time of Martin Luther, he could say that there was enough wood in all the pieces of the true cross scattered across Europe that you could build a ship from it. Well, again, this was a completely different thing, now having the mother of the emperor a devoted Christian, and now being this influence in the Christian world. Now, what were some of the general trends and characteristics going on? Well, we have to take a look not only of the different environment, but also at the Roman emperors after Constantine. You see, as noted before, Constantine's sons were also Christians, but not necessarily true Christians. They continued his practice of intervening in matters of the church. And they also did something that Constantine never tried to do. His successors, his sons, tried to stamp out paganism. In the year 356, Constantinus closed the pagan temples and prohibited sacrifice to the old pagan gods with a death penalty for dilating his decrees. So you see, this is a whole other thing, right? Persecution, which was once used against Christians, is now being used against the enemies of Christians, or the theological or religious opponents of Christians. And isn't this just the tendency, right? I mean, it's wrong to persecute believers, but it was also wrong to persecute the pagans. We would say today, from our Western perspective, which was very difficult for them to grab a hold of course, in their day, we would say, let them have the freedom of religion, even as Constantine has said. But his sons did not continue the same ideal. So Emperor Constantinus followed after this policy of persecuting pagans, but after him, there was a nephew of Constantinus a nephew of Constantine named Julian, who came to the throne. Julian barely survived a massacre of his entire family, who were killed by soldiers who wanted to prevent the threat of the sons of Constantine becoming the next emperors. Julian was trained by Arian tutors, and he developed an attraction to Greek philosophies and pagan mysteries. He thought of himself as somewhat of an intellectual and was never happier than during the 2 years when he spent at Athens, which of course was the intellectual center of the world in that day. Julian became the emperor in the year 361, and that year he attended his last Christian worship service. He knew that he would never be accepted as emperor if he was hostile to Christianity, but once he became emperor, then he showed his true colors. At first, Julian promoted what we might call a diversity campaign, where he wasn't against Christianity, he just also promoted all the other religions as well. He would allow and promote them all. He even spoke of rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem for the Jews. But as he promoted a return to the old Greek religions and philosophies, he really hoped that if he left the Christians alone, that they would just fight each other and destroy each other. But when that didn't happen, then Julian embarked on an anti-Christian campaign. This is why they call him Julian the Apostate. He took old pagan temples that were given to Christians and gave them back to the pagans. He restricted what Christians could teach. He only reigned for 2 years, and he died on the field of battle in Persia. It is said that as he lay dying on the field of battle, that he reached into his guts that were bleeding, and he